The sky above Sable Ridge didn't speak much, not in words, not in color. It just stretched endless and pale like parchment too long in the sun. It was a kind of sky that swallowed sound, dull memory, and made a man forget there'd ever been a world beyond fence lines and horse trails. Bowen Calder liked it that way. He liked quiet things, things that didn't expect more than he could give. It was near sundown when he found her. At first, she looked like a bundle of prairie brush, slumped near his water trough, dust-caked and still. But then she moved just barely, and the light caught the sharp line of her cheekbone, the dry tangle of her dark hair. She wasn't dead. Not yet. She had one hand clenched around a hide-wrapped bundle, and the other resting near a knife that had long since dulled. Bowen didn't speak. He crouched beside her and studied her breath, shallow, slow. A bruise bloomed along the side of her jaw. Old blood crusted on her sleeve. She was thin in a way that meant she'd gone without for too long, muscles hollowed by hunger and resolve. He gathered her in his arms without ceremony. She was lighter than she should have been. She didn't resist, just curled slightly, as if even unconscious. She braced for being thrown. Inside the cabin, he laid her on the cot by the hearth and stoked the fire higher. Steam rose from the pot he'd left boiling, scented with sage and bone. He soaked a cloth and cleaned her face, careful around the swelling, then unwrapped the bundle she still clutched. It wasn't a weapon, just a torn piece of deer hide, stitched with red thread, and a symbol he didn't recognize. She woke before dawn. Bowen was outside, splitting kindling, when he heard the creak of floorboards. He didn't go in, just said loud enough, "There's water on the table. Take it slow." When he did return, she sat against the wall, knees drawn to her chest, eyes sharp with distrust. She hadn't touched the water. "Name's Bowen," he offered, setting a tin cup near her feet. She stared at him, unblinking. "I reckon you don't owe me a thing," he said after a beat, "but you're welcome to rest a while, long as you don't pull that knife on me." Silence stretched between them like a wire pulled tight. He nodded once and turned away, giving her the space to disappear as she chose. She didn't. For the next 2 days, they lived like ghosts sharing the same house. She barely spoke, ate only when he wasn't looking, never let the deer-hide bundle leave her side. Bowen didn't press. He knew the look of someone whose soul hadn't caught up to their body yet. He let her be. On the 3rd day, she stood outside the cabin before he did. Her hair was tied back roughly, a strip of cloth wrapped around her wrist where the bruising had darkened. She didn't speak, just pointed to a section of broken fence near the horse pen. "I saw it yesterday," she said. Her voice was husky, scraped raw. Figured it needed fixing. Bowen blinked at her, then nodded. "You saw right." She worked beside him in silence, her hands calloused but sure. She used a hammer, like someone who had once been taught, but hadn't been allowed to learn. By mid-morning, the fence stood straighter than it had in months. He handed her a canteen and watched as she drank deep, water running from the corner of her mouth. She wiped it away with the back of her hand, then looked out over the field. "I had a brother once," she said. "He used to ride fence lines like this. Said it made him feel like he was the only thing standing between our land and the world." Bowen waited, but she didn't say more. That night, he left a fresh piece of bread on the table and turned in early. Before he blew out the lamp, he heard her whisper, so faint he could have imagined it. "Tala." He let the name settle like dust on an empty chair. The next morning, she was gone. Panic wasn't something Bowen knew well, but it scratched at his ribs when he stepped out and saw the empty porch. He scanned the ridge, the barn, the watering trough. Nothing. He saddled his horse, boots crunching against frostbitten dirt, and followed the faint trail of her footprints past the edge of the property, into the dry creek below. He found her crouched behind a boulder, breathing hard, knife in hand. "Soldiers," she said when he dismounted. Her voice trembled with something colder than fear. "I heard them." Bowen listened. Wind. Crickets. No hoofbeats. No shouting. "There's no one out here but me and the wind," he said softly. Tala shook her head. "You don't understand. They don't wear colors. They don't march in lines. They hunt in twos. Like coyotes." He didn't touch her. Didn't reach out. Just crouched low beside her and let the silence speak first. "You're safe here," he said. "I got no love for war. Not on either side." Her grip on the knife slackened. Not much, but enough. That night, she didn't eat alone. She sat across from him and tore bread into pieces with steady fingers. When he passed her a bowl of stew, their hands brushed. She didn't flinch. Later, he found her standing barefoot near the paddock, eyes turned to stars. "I didn't mean to stay," she said, voice barely a thread. "Didn't ask you to," he replied. "I just needed a place where I wasn't hunted." "You found one." She turned and for the first time looked at him fully, eyes wide and too tired to lie. The light from the cabin spilled over her shoulder, outlining the soft curve of her jaw, the shadow bloom of fading bruises. "You don't know what'll follow me," she warned. Bowen tipped his hat back and held her gaze. "Don't need to." Behind them, something cracked in the distance, sharp and sudden. Tala stiffened. Bowen's hand dropped to his side, not for a weapon, but for stillness. "Stay here," he said. But she stepped forward, eyes locked on the black horizon. "No," she whispered. "They're not following anymore." She paused. "They're arriving." By morning, the air had thickened, pregnant with heat and the weight of something unspoken. The wind blew low, brushing over the tall grass like fingers trailing across skin, stirring the dust but offering no comfort. Bowen moved through morning like a man chasing routine, but his eyes kept drifting toward the ridge, toward the line of sky where hoofbeats might one day crest. Tala was already outside, sitting near the horses with her legs tucked beneath her. She looked like part of the land, still, watchful, belonging to the silence between bird song and wind. She fed a carrot to the youngest mare, whispering words in a language Bowen didn't know, but had started to feel. Not through understanding, but through tone, the way she softened when she spoke to animals, the way her voice dropped when night crept near. "You sleep at all?" he asked, not looking directly at her. She nodded. "Long enough." "Dreams?" She didn't answer. He didn't push. Dreams were sacred things in people like her, half warning, half memory. Later, they rode into town for supplies. The trail was bone dry, the kind that echoed beneath hoof and boot like it was trying to remember rain. Tala wore her hair low, face shaded beneath a borrowed hat. She didn't speak as they passed the first saloon, or when Emmett Raleigh narrowed his eyes at her from the porch of the general store. Words traveled faster in small towns and rivers and flood. Bowen dismounted and handed her the reins. "Stay close." "I'm not afraid," she replied. "I am." Inside, they moved through shelves without haste. Tala picked up a tin of coffee, then paused at a high shelf where small toys were stacked. Simple things carved from wood. She touched a horse, traced its shape with her thumb. Her eyes lingered longer than she meant them to. Bowen watched. Quiet. On the walk back, she said, "I used to carve with my brother. He'd shape wolves out of bone. Gave one to me when I was small. Told me to keep it under my blanket, to bite the darkness if it came too close." "You still have it?" "No." Her voice tightened. "They burned everything." That night, she found a carved figure waiting on her saddle blanket. A horse, rough-edged but honest. Its legs were uneven, its neck too thick, but its face was proud, and the tail curved just like the one she admired. She picked it up, held it to her chest for a moment, then tucked it into her satchel without a word. The next morning, she tied it into her braid. Bowen didn't mention it, but something shifted. He began leaving things for her, a tin cup cleaned and warmed near the fire, a piece of smoked meat wrapped in cloth, a book open to poems she couldn't read but liked to touch. She, in turn, stitched the torn hem of his shirt one night, folding it neatly and setting it on his bedroll, with a single wildflower tucked into the collar. Neither one of them ever spoke of these offerings. One evening, while splitting wood near the barn, Bowen caught sight of her dancing. Not the kind meant for watching, but the kind meant for remembering. She moved barefoot in the dust, arms slow, eyes closed. The firelight cast her shadow long and weightless. She stopped when she saw him watching, said nothing, just slipped away. He couldn't sleep that night. He kept hearing the rhythm of her steps in his mind, the soft echo of something sacred moving just beyond reach. The next day, Deputy Hank Lawrence rode out to the ranch, saddle creaking beneath his weight. He didn't dismount. "Just checking in," he said. "Heard the girl's still with you." Bowen kept his voice even. "She's got a name. Don't much matter what it is if her people are still raiding. Had a trader hit 2 nights ago down by Alder Creek. Folks are nervous. She could be trouble." Bowen stared him down. "She's not. Just saying. Calder, don't let your heart get ahead of your gut." The deputy rode off with suspicion trailing like dust. Tala stood behind the barn, arms crossed, having heard every word. Bowen turned to her, unsure what to say. But she spoke first. "I can leave." "You don't have to." She shook her head. "You've given me more than I ever asked for. And still not enough to make you stay?" Her breath hitched. "No one's ever asked me that." Bowen walked closer. "Then let me." She looked up at him. The fire from the forge behind her painted gold into the curve of her neck, caught the wet in her lashes. She didn't answer, but she didn't turn away. Her fingers twitched at her side like they wanted to be held, but didn't know how to ask. He didn't touch her, just said, "You're not the one who should be running." Later that night, she told him about the fire, about the way the soldiers came in darkness, and how her people scattered like birds into the canyons, how she ran and didn't stop, even when she heard her brother scream. "I didn't look back," she said. "I just kept going." "You survived." "I left them behind." Bowen took a breath and looked into the fire. Sometimes survival is the only kind of courage you got left. When he woke at dawn, she was already outside, braid unraveling, arms bare to the cold. She held her satchel open and pulled something from the bottom, something wrapped in deer hide. She placed it gently on the porch rail. "I need you to hold this," she said. "What is it?" "My name," she replied. "All of it." He stared at the bundle, but didn't reach for it. She smiled softly. "Not yet, but soon." Then, on the wind, they both heard it. The low, steady thunder of hooves. Distant but closing. Unmistakable. Bowen rose, heart pounding. Tala didn't move. "They're not looking for me," she said, voice calm. He looked at her. She looked back. "They're coming because they found me." The sound grew louder, less like hooves and more like thunder remembering its name. Bowen stood at the edge of the porch, rifle untouched, hands loose at his sides. The sky had turned a deeper kind of blue, the kind that held its breath. Behind him, Tala didn't move. She stood straight, braid unraveling down her back, one hand curled around the satchel she'd offered him just hours before. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't afraid. She looked like someone about to choose. 6 riders crested the far ridge, horses kicking dust into the rising wind. Their faces were painted, not for war, but remembrance. At the front rode a tall man with a narrow frame and eyes like smoke at the edge of a burn. Tala whispered one word under her breath. "Genoa." Bowen didn't ask, didn't need to. The riders descended in a slow, steady pace, no weapons drawn, no threat made, just presence. When they reached the gate, the leader dismounted and looked between them. He didn't greet Bowen. He didn't speak right away. Tala stepped forward. "You found me," she said softly. Genoa nodded once. "You stopped running." She tilted her head. There was somewhere worth stopping. Bowen said nothing. He wasn't part of this. Not really. Not yet. Genoa's gaze landed on him, sharp and measured. "Did he keep you?" Tala shook her head. "He let me stay." "That's not the same." "No," she said. "It's better." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of a language Bowen didn't know how to speak, but he could feel it. History heavy between them, grief woven through every gesture. He didn't interrupt. He stood there like a fence post, sturdy, unyielding, just enough to mark a boundary. Genoa turned to her again. "We buried your brother." She closed her eyes. The wind caught her hair and scattered it across her cheek. When she opened them, there were no tears. "I thought he might still be out there," she whispered. "He was, for a while." Bowen's hand flexed at his side. Chenoa's voice softened. Your uncle is still calling you traitor. He says you ran and left the village to burn. He wasn't there, she replied. He stayed in his tent while the rest of us fought. He wants you returned. Tried to trade pelts to have you brought back. Then tell him this, she said. I won't belong to a man who never once bled for people he claimed to lead. Chenoa's jaw tensed. He won't take that quietly. I don't want quiet, she said. I want truth. The other riders remained mounted, still as shadows. Bowen finally spoke. If you need her to leave, she won't go alone. Chenoa eyed him. You'd go to war over a woman you barely know? Bowen's voice was calm, steady. I've fought for less and regretted it more. The wind shifted again, warm and dry. One of the horses pawed the earth, restless. Tala turned to Bowen. Her face was unreadable, but her body leaned toward him now, not away. I'll walk with you, she said to Chenoa, as far as the canyon. Chenoa nodded. You'll come back? She looked at Bowen. That depends on what I find. The ride to the canyon was silent. Bowen watched them vanish into the low rise beyond the ridge, her figure growing smaller until it became part of the horizon. He stood there long after they disappeared, heart hollow but steady. He didn't try to follow. He let her go, not because he wanted to, but because love asked that much sometimes. 3 nights passed. He worked the fence, fed the horses, left the porch light burning. On the 4th morning, she returned. She didn't come on horseback. She came walking, alone, her satchel swinging gently at her side, the wooden horse still tied in her braid. She climbed the steps and stood before him, barefooted and dust-covered, eyes filled with something fierce and fragile. He didn't speak. She handed him the satchel. I burned the bundle, she said. The name I was given, the one they used to own me. Bowen opened the door and stepped aside. She didn't go in. Instead, she reached for his hand. I want to stay, not because I'm running, not because I'm lost. He met her gaze and for the first time saw all of her, grief and grace, past and present, warrior and woman. I want to stay, she whispered, because when I was standing between 2 worlds, I realized the one I wanted was the one where someone let me be enough. Bowen's fingers closed around hers. Not tight, not possessive, just there, steady. The porch lamp flickered in the rising wind, and somewhere behind them, the canyon echoed with the call of a hawk, sharp, soaring, free. In that moment, the man who had once believed himself alone became something else entirely. He became the place someone returned to, and he knew some stories don't end with a kiss. Some end with a woman standing beside you in silence, and the whole world finally feeling quiet.